Ahoy, mateys, and welcome, ye scurvy dogs. No. No, I'm not doing that. So you're going to play Maelstrom. Nice.
Nice.
Good choice, but there's a few things that you should know before you dive into Pirate Simulator 2019, and I'm here to take you through them. So the game is easy to learn, but it's pretty hard to master, and there's a few things that the tutorial doesn't actually cover that I'm going to go over. To start, for those who have just stumbled across the game, I'll quickly cover what Maelstrom is, then we'll talk about ships, then I'll cover some stuff that you should know about gameplay. So firstly, Maelstrom is, at its heart, a battle royale game with ships. You have various ship types, heading into a game where you try not to die while you collect power-ups, and the circle shrinks, forcing you closer and closer to your opponents until eventually a winner is crowned. Don't worry, I'll just swallow my saliva. So you can play solo, or you can play as a team of 3, but your goals remain largely the same. There's been talk of PvE on Discord, but there's nothing yet. It's coming. It's coming. So I'll just dive right in. So, to start with, let's talk about ship types and races. The moment you enter the game, you'll be met with this big old screen in the middle here, and it can be pretty confusing because there's a bunch of ships and you won't know where to start. After the tutorial, you'll be given all of these ships and stuff, and it just says to pick one. That's a pretty difficult decision to make, and one that took me a while to make, but honestly, it actually doesn't matter for the most part. I'll actually be really quick on ship types and races, just because there's not a lot to say about them unless I go for a big in-depth video on why you'd want to use each ship and what they're best for. The short version of the story is that there's 3 races and 3 classes of ship. You've got your sloops, which are small agile ships that use their mobility to their advantage, finding their moments to deal damage in small windows that they create through careful positioning. Frigates, which are mid-size all-rounder ships that often hit a nice middle ground. They have decent damage, decent speed, decent mobility. They're the most straightforward in terms of positioning. Probably start with these. And then battleships. These are the big boys. These guys often have specialised combat roles, but their manoeuvrability is often the lowest in the game. They hit hard, they take big hits, and are generally a good way to pull threat in a team if you're running a bunch of sloops with you. Then there are the 3 races that are currently available. Undead, coming January, I'm going to make a separate video for them when they get released. Humans, they have the best gun in the game. No contest, they really have the longest range, the highest accuracy, and then the passives and the captains to prove it. Don't try to outrange them, they'll hit you in Canada from Africa. It's actually offensive. Dwarves are quite simply tanks. They use a few cannons that hit like a truck, they all have engines that can be put into reverse, they can fire from all sides and come packing seriously decent armour, even on a sloop. Dwarves are the Beyblade of Maelstrom, but the crew suck. Probably because of their tiny legs.
I'm giving it all I've got!
Orcs I've left till last because they're definitely the most mechanically odd of the 3 races. They have the weakest aft armour of all the races. Oh, excuse me, my cat is going on a journey. And can only ever fire from port, fore and starboard. So they have the most crew of all ships, and they fight the hardest. There's actually a lot to cover on Orcs, so definitely check out my video on that when it comes around. They're the race that I actually like the most. Oh, my cat wants to go out. You go in. You leaving? What are you doing? You make a decision. Bye. Amazing. So, let's take a look at this side of the screen. This is where you actually build your ships. You've got your captains, your crew, your hardpoints, and your passives. I'll be quick about this because there's so much depth to it, but really the main thing you need to know is that there's a power score for each ship that roughly determines the level at which you'll be match made in solo. Multiplayer is the Wild West, so if you don't want to be matched with players with about 3000 power score on a 2000 power score ship, keep it under roughly 1700 in team games until that gets dealt with by the devs, unless you want to be sledgehammered by some of the more experienced players out there. It happens often. There are 3 captains for each race, you buy them and that's it, no upgrading. There are lots of crew for each race, and their abilities are always rolled from a pool, but the crewman rolls are always the same, so you'll see similar stats from a surgeon no matter what race they are. They can be upgraded with this button. Ship hard points are unlocked with every ship level you go up by using this button. You'll see that the power score addition is always flat, so you have the ability to determine what you want to bolt onto your ship based on your build. You'll develop your builds as you discover more about the ships, but I'll talk about individual ship builds in the more in-depth videos. So, let's talk about this UI. It's not super well explained in the main tutorial, so I'm going to try and break it down a little bit. Your armour and your hull can be seen in plain numbers on the left side of your screen. If your hull drops to 0, you're dead. You're out of the game. Don't let that happen. Your armour is shown here also, and you can get a rough idea of how it's doing by looking at your ship as well, indicated by these helpful indicators, as well as any sparking and flaming that your ship might be doing on a particular side. Your hull can't be damaged by regular means until you are attacked on a side with no armour. General rule of thumb, don't turn your unarmoured side to an enemy broadside. That's like sticking your nads in a circular saw. It's not going to go well. Your sails and crew health can be found here. Quite simply, as your sails decrease, you'll lose a significant amount of your speed, turning and acceleration. You won't be immobilised if your sails hit 0, but you'll go a lot slower. As your crew decreases, your cannons will load a lot slower and you'll fire a lot less, and your accuracy will be wildly decreased. More importantly, if you hit 0 crew and someone boards you, they'll deal significantly more boarding damage. On a ship with good crew, that damage can literally take you from 100% hull to nothing without ever touching your armour, which is bad. On the note of sails and crew, you'll actually see that you have 3 types of ammunition. This is universal to all ships, and each type in turn deals standard damage to hull and armour, sail damage, and crew damage. The second 2 ignore armour entirely, as they don't deal hull damage under any circumstances. One important thing to note is that your cannons are grouped by their cardinal direction, and each of them load and fire independently, so maximising your damage will involve turning your ship to use each of these freshly loaded sides of fire. I'll also quickly cover boarding as well, since it's important. On most ships, you can use your boarding using your right click to fire short range hooks from your port and starboard sides. If this hits, your ships will be dragged together, and whilst you're touching tips, the crews will fight, with the boarding crew attempting to destroy the ship from the inside while you board. After a short time, the ships will be released, and you'll have a boarding cooldown before you can go again. Boarding is really good for locking down enemy ships into a position that might not be favourable for them, or you can use it to outright kill some ships, depending on your circumstances. Keep in mind that both ships' cannons will be able to fire and reload as normal during boarding, so for Pete's sake, don't board someone on their broadside on your unarmoured side. It could be the last mistake you ever make. Lastly, I want to cover environmental threats, as bonuses as well as boons. Boons are great. There are 5 boons that you can get, starting with firepower, speed, and armour. You can pick up a maximum of 10 of each of these guys, and they'll give you stacking bonuses to your damage, speed, and armour values respectively. Pick them up. Then there's the Eye of the Storm, which you can only grab 1 of, but it's a general boost to pretty much all your stats. It spawns fairly rarely on a different few conditions, so keep your eyes peeled for it. Which actually makes this a good time to mention NPC ships, which come in a few flavours. Goblin Raider, Windcatcher Skiff, Armour Galleon, and Treasure Galleon. They drop specific boons based on their types, except Treasure Galleon, which actually has significantly more health, but drops multiple boons from a fairly large pool, so he's always worth murdering. He can drop Eye of the Storm as well, so keep your eye out for him. Now the last boon is the Repair boon. Now this boon is an interesting one because it is both unstackable and timed. Now what it does is it repairs your armour at a flat rate while you have it on. If you pick up a second armour repair while it's still going, it will actually reset the timer and waste some of the time that you had left on the initial boon. So if you've got 2 of these floating around and you have a lot of armour and hull to repair, wait until your first boon has run out, then pick up your second boon to make it the most effective it can be. Brinemore is this guy from the artwork. He only appears in this level, and he doesn't always turn up. If he does turn up, he'll straight up kill you, given the opportunity. Don't get in his way. He really doesn't like you. He can be killed for a bunch of gold, but he's a bit of a raid boss, so going it alone will take a whole bunch of time, and you're better off not bothering without a team and some time. Thrashers are big swimmy boys who come along, and if you find yourself outside of the circle in the dead water, they're not instant, but they're pretty fast, and then they're an instant kill. Don't stay in the dead water too long. Maelstroms appear semi-randomly in certain locations, some bigger than others, but all follow roughly the same rules. They spin clockwise, and they instantly kill you if you fall in the centre. Don't fall in the centre. Being shot at.
Oh no!
Currents might seem like they could be the best thing ever, but don't be fooled, currents are the worst thing ever. They do one good thing, and that's speed you up if you're in the right direction. Other than that, they're the worst. They push power-ups around, they slow you down in fights, they mess with your boarding, they suck. Ban currents 2019, I'm sick of them. I think that's really about it for now. There's a lot of things that I haven't covered in this video. In particular, I haven't actually talked about what ships are good for what, and why you might choose one build over another for certain ships. There's a good reason for that, and that's just because it's not simple to explain. But I will be following up this video with a bunch of other videos. They might take a little while to come out. I'm a sort of busy guy, it's around Christmas, but once they come out, I'll stick some links in the description, and you can go and take a look. I'll probably be covering it as human ships, orc ships and dwarf ships as an individual entity, and then I might be making some more specific sort of montages of videos with ships, but I actually tried to do that earlier this week with Cleaver and got matched up with nothing but Fury's Hold, and I couldn't win a single fight. It was the most embarrassing thing. I just deleted all of the footage. It was tragic. I don't want to talk about it. But I think that's it for this video. So, don't worry, we'll get there on the rest of the videos, but we'll get there together, as a crew, and we'll sing some shanties. Bye.